Hi, it's Dr. Robert Brueck coming to you again with another segment of What's New in Cosmetic Surgery. Also, again, I want to wish each and every one of you a joyous and blessed Christmas and all the riches of God's blessings in the new year. And I pray for peace in your homes, in your area, our country, our world, because it certainly is a different place from when I grew up. So again, a blessed Christmas and a joyous New Year. I want to talk a little bit about belly fat. A lot of times men are becoming more and more conscious of cosmetic surgery, and I would say about 10% of patients now come in are men. And one of the common procedures men want is liposuction to their abdomen and flanks. And when I examine them, they come in with the classic beer belly. So the question comes up, how much of that is actually fat exterior, that is between the skin and the muscle, versus interior or central body fat or visceral fat? As it turns out, that visceral fat is really damaging to your health and predisposes to heart conditions, heart attacks, and even premature death. Even if you're not overweight, if you have a lot of obesity internally, it's injurious to your health. So it's important to get that checked out. So when a man comes in for evaluation for liposuction, I put them on the table, I flex their hips, and I examine the abdomen. And many times there really is not a lot of fatty tissue underneath the skin. It's mostly internal. So I guess there is something to beer belly. There is something to be concerned about, and there is something to exercise and develop a healthy diet. And maybe this new year will motivate you to that end. You know, another thing that I often, patients ask me about, what should they do before surgery, after surgery, and many of them ask about coffee. Is coffee good or bad? Should I avoid it? Coffee actually is pretty good. They did a recent study. I thought it was interesting because I drink coffee in the morning. They studied over 200,000 people who were coffee drinkers. And it appears that people that are moderate coffee drinkers, which they define as 3 to 5 cups a day, have a less likelihood of dying prematurely, 15% less likelihood of developing neurological disorders, and also type 2 diabetes. Now, what was interesting, it had nothing to do whether it was caffeinated or decaffeinated, but the statistics did not hold true if people were smokers. Once again, another good reason to quit. So coffee in moderation, and I think that's true in anything, is good. So coffee drinkers, enjoy that morning cup, and maybe have an extra one or two, and enjoy the good health that comes with it. Another thing that I read recently, and I think it's appropriate for this time of the year, and it had to do that concept of loneliness. Christmas time is such a great time. It's for family and friends, and decorating the tree, and the Christmas dinner, and the turkey, and the ham, and sharing love and presents, and hugging and kissing. But there are a lot of people out there that are lonely. And in this study, what they did was they studied the effects of loneliness on 141 people. And they found that people that were lonely had a much higher degree of stress hormones circulating in their body, things like cortisol, sort of the flight and fright mechanism. So loneliness is kind of injurious to your health. So maybe this Christmas season, and you might reach out to a neighbor, a friend down at the 7-Eleven, or somebody who's lonely, who doesn't have a home or have a friend. Maybe extending a hand of friendship, or an invitation to dinner, or a little gift, or a gesture of kindness will go a long way in making it a special Christmas for that individual. And maybe not just at Christmas time, but maybe make it a habit that carries throughout the year. I think it'll bring a little comfort to your soul. I've always said to my kids, when you look at what brings you the greatest joy and happiness, they're usually moments when you're in contribution. So think about that individual and that loneliness, and maybe we can all do a little bit to overcome that loneliness and make it a friendlier area, a friendlier country, and a friendlier home. So think about that loneliness. The other thing I want to talk about is liposuction. Many times people come in and they have this misconception that I get liposuction, and you just suck and just keep sucking until you get rid of all my fat. And the question is, how much is too much? And there was a study done at Northwestern University where they studied individuals who had undergone liposuction, and it involved over 4,500 patients, so it was a pretty good study. And the complication rate was low, like probably 1 in 1,000. High volume liposuction was defined as people who have an excess of 5,000 grams per session. And I think in the state of Florida, they limit us to about 3,000, 3,500. So it's important to understand that sometimes certain states will mandate or dictate just how much fat you can remove. And they found that the overall complication rate for the 4,500 patients was 1.5%. However, in high volume liposuction, greater than 5,000, it was 3.7%. And the other thing that was interesting is, if somebody was obese and they had a very high BMI, that seemed to protect them from complications. So it's kind of interesting that we always taught that high BMIs, obesity tends to lead to greater complications. But in terms of liposuction, it didn't. But overall, the complication rate was minimal. I think for 4,500 patients, 1.5% is very acceptable. And the number one complication was seroma. Seroma. And seroma is nothing more than a collection of fluid, and normally how we treat it is we just simply drain it. We prep it with a little antiseptic solution, stick a needle in there and drain it. And sometimes you have to drain it 2 or 3 times, but that's the way we normally treat seromas. So liposuction is certainly an outstanding procedure and can do a great amount of reconfiguration of your body. And there is diet-resistant fat, so liposuction is a good consideration. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about, because this is the time of year when people come in, they want a quick fix for the holidays, and Botox is very, very common in terms of people wanting Botox. It's a great product, and I do it all the time, but many times people will come in and want to dicker about price. And they talk about this guy's giving Botox for $4, $5, $6 a unit, or I can do my whole forehead for $100. A couple of comments to just be cautioning you. Many times what individuals will do, and because now everybody's doing Botox, dentists are doing it, they're doing it at 7-Eleven with your morning coffee, so Botox is everywhere. And they'll charge you $4, $5, $6. Many times this is bootleg Botox. It's Botox that's not manufactured by Allergan or a reputable pharmaceutical company. So that's number one. That's a word of caution. If it's really, really cheap, you should ask the individual, where is the Botox coming from? Because you might be surprised. The other thing that is common is that what they'll do is they'll tell you that they'll treat a unit. For example, they'll treat the forehead. They'll treat the frown lines. They'll treat the crow's feet. And I said, we'll do it for $100. And so what they do is they undertreat. They'll put in a few units so that they make a profit, but then in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, it has to come back. So what I tell my patients is I put in a set number of units, especially if somebody's getting it for the first time, and then we titrate it. Come back in 2 or 3 weeks. If you don't have the effect you want, we put a few more units in. So it's important to treat the area adequately. Another thing I want to talk about, and it seems like I see a lot of this, I don't know if it's an epidemic, and it has to do with gynecomastia. Now we have all these new procedures on the horizon, and we're going to be talking about one of them that we're going to be doing is called sculpture, which is a non-surgical fat removal. It's a laser-based procedure that has a laser specific for fat. And I think that when you evaluate gynecomastia, and again, this is why it's so important to go to a board-certified plastic surgeon, I have seen people come into my office, into my practice, that have had cool sculpting for gynecomastia with no results. Because when you look at gynecomastia on a man, it's important to distinguish between pseudogynecomastia, which is only fat, and true gynecomastia, which is fat and breast tissue. Breast tissue will not respond to any type of non-invasive procedure. So it really behooves you to be cautious, and another reason to go to a board-certified plastic surgeon to make that distinguishing difference between true gynecomastia, which is breast tissue which won't respond, and pseudogynecomastia, which is fat and may respond. Another product is Lipo 202. It's in clinical stage 3 trials. And what's kind of interesting and unique, again, it's a non-invasive way to remove fat. It's kind of interesting. I may be doing a blog on it soon. When it will become available clinically for general use is unknown. But it has a certain amount of appeal. You come in, you do a series of injections, and literally just melt your fat away. Sort of like sculpture. Sculpture is a neat procedure. It's painless. You feel some tingling and you know, maybe a little burning, but certainly not something that requires anesthetic. And it's only 23 minutes. I tell patients, why freeze fat for hours when you can melt it in minutes? So we're going to be getting the sculpture, and we'll be doing more blogs and more video blogs on sculpture. We're hoping to get our apparatus sometime the end of January. And you may want to do a little preliminary homework. Check it out yourself. Sculpture. S-C-U-L-P, capital S-U-R-E, sculpture. Something on the horizon. The one thing I want to end with is about submental fat. A lot of times people are talking about submental fat. And recently, Kythera, Kybella got approval, FDA approval, for injection of their product into the submental area to melt the fat. I can assure you that it can work. I did a lady about 10 years ago where I injected deoxycholic acid and phosphatidylcholine, which are naturally occurring substances in your body, and it helped to melt the fat. But again, talking about who should do this, I think you need to go to a board-certified plastic surgeon, because when you melt that fat, you got to ask yourself, what is behind the fat? Well, there may be muscle bands that appear, so now you have loose skin, muscle bands. So yes, I've gotten rid of the fat, but I still have an old looking neck. So you just have to be careful what you wish for. And so just kind of think about it. I think the advantage would be greater for somebody who's younger, whose skin has a lot of resiliency and elasticity, and somebody whose muscle bands are still crossing, so they won't get the band. So I think Kythera, Kybella may have a role to play. The other thing too is sometimes people are using non-invasive procedures, such as Cool Sculpt now has a special treatment head, I think, for submental fat, and Sculpture may also have a treatment head for submental fat. But again, understand one thing: these apparatuses just remove the fat. They don't tighten skin, and they don't tighten muscles. I was reading where the injections for Kythera can be like $1,200, $1,300, $1,400, and you may need 3 to 5 injections to get the desired effect. So let's say you need 4. Let's split the difference. 4 times $1,400 is $5,600. You might as well get a neck lift. You can get rid of the fat, you can tighten the muscles, get rid of the excess skin, and have a more youthful neck that day forward forevermore. So sometimes you got to understand the economics of it, and it may be more prudent to do a full neck lift rather than just do an injection. So again, see a board-certified plastic surgeon. Now again, if any of you have any questions or you want topics that you want me to research, discuss, feel free to contact me. Go to my website, Beauty by Brueck. Email me at rjbrueck, B-R-U-E-C-K, at abodyandface.com. I always tell people when they ask me what do you do, I say, keep America beautiful one body at a time. And again, I want to close by saying thank you for all your kind support. Again, I want to wish all of you a very blessed Christmas holiday season, and the richest of God's blessings of health and happiness in the new year. Thank you.